So I just made the hardest bullet hell game on Roblox. Why? Well, it's because I wanted to take a little break from my main project and do something new and easy to make. And I got this idea from experimenting with explosions and thought, how about I make a game about explosions? And this sounded really great, but what I didn't know at first is that this would turn into one of the most mentally draining projects I have ever worked on. So let me explain what this game was going to be. The plan was to put players on a map with one goal: survival. More specifically, to survive from things like rockets, bombs and other stuff falling from the sky. Literally. And so with this, it was finally time to start a blank project. Now, of course, because we are professionals here, the very first thing we need to do is to make an ugly prototype to see the plan in action. So using some basic parts and a little bit of coding, I made the very first rocket. Next, I created this part that will be responsible for spawning all the rockets. After that, I ran the first test to see if everything works, and it did, but it was very underwhelming. And that's because there were no explosions. So after like 15 minutes of messing around with particles, we now have explosions. And as a cherry on top, I also added a camera shake to make it even better. Now, to clarify, I've been lying to you, because the game doesn't sound like this. It actually sounds like this. Yeah. There are no sounds, and that's because the game didn't have any sounds until later in development. But because I have to keep you guys engaged somehow, for now I have to add all those sound effects in editing. Except this one. That one was real, I promise. Next, I had kind of a dilemma because I was trying to figure out how are the maps going to look like, and I went through a bunch of different ideas like square-shaped maps, circular-shaped maps. Then I made a map that looked like an obstacle course, but in the end I combined a circular base plate with terrain, which was perfect. After this, I got to work on the first map, which I didn't really think through, and that was a house with a road. So first I quickly modeled a house in Blender. This is funny because it took me like 4 hours and it still looks like shit. Then I placed the house on the map, added a road, some cars and some decorations. But then after testing, I realized I made a fatal mistake. When a player is standing inside the house, he cannot die because the house is indestructible, and this is not what I intended. So to fix this, I simply made the roof of the house destructible. Next, I wanted to tackle this platform that I've originally made for a map to basically sit on, so it doesn't look like it's floating in space. It also had these spikes I added for players who accidentally fall from the map, but I didn't like it. And after a long and thorough discussion with myself, I decided to change it to water. So now we have a working map and we also have a semi-working gameplay, but we still need something to tie all those things together, and that's a lobby. I already had this platform which served as a lobby, but it was time to turn it into a proper one. So after an hour of modeling, I had something decent. Then I put it next to the map so that players in the lobby can have a good look at the chaos happening in front of them. The only problem was that the lobby was empty. So I put some decorations around to make it fuller, but there was still something very important missing. But before I tell you what it is, you have to understand a few things. You see, even though the game is about surviving rockets of all kinds, so far the game only has one incredibly sad looking rocket. So to spice up the gameplay, I took some time to think and came up with a whole bunch of dangerous things like actual rockets, bigger rockets, lasers, sticky bombs, and my personal favorite, freeze rockets, which single-handedly made the game like 10 times more difficult and also made me nearly lose my mind from the number of times I've died because of them. But first, I think we should celebrate a little bit because I finally added sound effects to the game. Anyway, the game was quite difficult. And to make it a little bit easier, I added a bunch of items that you can find around the map, like a speed boost which gives you a supersonic speed for a few seconds, stamina regeneration, health points, or tokens. Now you might be asking, what are tokens? Well, remember how the lobby was missing something important? That thing was a shop. And here you can use those tokens to buy even better items like band-aid, medkit or a shield, which literally makes you invincible for a few seconds. At this point I was almost ready to release the game, but the game only had one map and I had to make more. So I made two more maps. The first one, partially inspired by Willy Wonka, is made from ice creams and lollipops and has this happy vibe to it, and to contrast that, the second map is the exact opposite. Now this map was quite special because it originally had an elevator in the middle that you could use to get on top of this head and find better items, but it was so slow that by the time you got to the top you were already dead. So instead I replaced the elevator with a jump pad, which is much faster. Now at this point I was quite happy with how the game turned out, and I let one of my friends play it early. And to my surprise, not only did he say that it's too easy, he also didn't even die once. This made me furious, because the game wasn't supposed to be easy, but he was right. The game had some serious flaws. So I added more danger, more lasers, bigger freeze bombs, even bigger rockets that produce electric fields to constrain where players can move, flying blades, more map changes. But there is one more thing I added. You see, previously you could just stand on the edges of the map and be pretty much safe all the time. That's not good. So to fix this, please welcome my new favorite, rocket launchers, which will target you if you stand near the edges for a long time. So don't. Now all of this made the game harder, but it wasn't enough. And then I made one change that was the missing key all along: a guiding system. Let me explain. So far the rockets spawned completely randomly, meaning luck played a huge role. But with the new guiding system they can now spawn around players, which turned the game into absolute mayhem. Can you survive? I bet you can't. The game link is in the description, and I swear if you say the game is easy, I will